Hi class, continuing our discussion about strategic moves. One thing when an army invades another country, the first thing they do is they think about infrastructure and things that they need to take out, like communication or radar systems or something like that. And in fact, what they've done is they've segmented. They've segmented a military's capability to respond into different sections, and then they target which ones they want to take out. You do exactly the same kind of thing in marketing. So today we're going to talk about segmentation and targeting. The basic concept of segmentation is you're picking targets, but now the devil is in the details. How do you define it? How do you know if they're any good? That's actually one thing people who segment don't always do a good job of doing. They say, okay, we're going to go after teenagers who live in California who wear purple socks or something like that. But the question is this a good segment or is it a bad segment? And so we'll be learning about that too. This is pretty much the process. First and foremost, when you do these things, what is your objective? I know that sounds really dumb, but you would be shocked how many times in industry when I sit back in a meeting and I say, what's our objective? And that's because you get busy. And when you get busy, you kind of forget about, well, what's the point to all this? But anyway, you form your hypothesis, and that's what do you think the opportunities are? And that's the thing. When you start out in segmentation, you brainstorm, and you just guess. You guess what you think is going to be a good segment. But then you need to figure it out. And the way to figure it out is, what are the variables of interest? And what that actually means is, what actually drives this segment to want to buy your product? And these variables are also called attributes. Then it goes towards the end user, and you pick which of these segments you want to target, and then you see whether or not it actually works. You would also be shocked. I also teach TEM 400, which is Technology Entrepreneurship. About 40% of the class is WP Carey. And I ask them, what is a market? How many of you have taken marketing? And they all raise their hands. And I said, okay, tell me, what is the definition? What is a market? Instant silence. But anyway, what is a market? Okay, so a market is a collection of individuals who basically value and use a product or service in a common way. But the other aspect of having a true market is that people can communicate about the product and they talk to others. Because if you do not have that, if your market doesn't interact with each other, then basically all you have is a bunch of individuals. You don't have a market. So the communication aspect is very important. A lot of people talk about market potential, and this is very important for entrepreneurs. And what market potential means is, in terms of purchases, how often are they going to buy and how big is their spending, times the number of organizations or number of people who the product can benefit. And that's what they mean by market potential. So segmentation is a process, and it's a process of grouping customers together. The thing is, when you say, we're going to sell into the medical market, I mean, it's just too broad. It's just this big nebulous mass. And so that's why we segment. Because you can't be all things to all people. And there are certain groups that are going to be more responsive than others. So the question is, how do I go about doing this process? Well, here's an example of what we mean by segmentation. The simplest and easiest way to do something is by perceptual map. And so what if I'm doing shoes? I make really great organic shoes. Well, all shoes are organic. They have carbon in it. But anyway. So the variables I pick for my axes are values. They're values of what I think customers will buy these shoes for. Or they're values that I believe that are going to drive sales. And so I decided to pick age, old and young, and whether they're active or not active. So I come up with 4 quadrants, and I gave them definitions. Like if you're old and low activity, odds are you're going to be buying these shoes for therapeutic reasons. If you're in the quadrant next to it, and this is what we mean by adjacent markets again. If I'm old and I'm active, then I'm consider those the go-getters. Those are the old grannies and grandpas who are out there walking fast. And the reason why we call it adjacent is how many values are you changing? You're only changing one. And that's why they say you can attack from one to another. On the other hand, for example, Starbucks. They're the example of the all-time great overreaches. Does anybody remember Starbucks ice cream? Yeah, a lot of you don't, because that's how well it did. And the thing is, Starbucks said we're a food company. We can sell any kind of food, and that's not. They're a beverage company, and they're thought of as a coffee company. Their brand can only go so far. We'll talk about that when we get to branding. Anyway, once I come up with these quadrants, I can also continue to keep segmenting. So now I'm going to pick the go-getters, and now I'm going to look at style and robustness, and I can just keep going on and on and on and on. But basically, that's what segmentation is. And so for an enterprise, it gives you focus. And you go after the choice opportunities. You go over those segments you think have the most market potential. The thing is, if you're selling to a customer, by segmenting them, again, marketing is about people who share common traits and are going to respond in a certain way. And so therefore, you can make things more personalized and you can have better product offerings. And especially in this digital age, that's important. So in terms of segmentation variables, what are they typically about? Well, sometimes you pick financials, meaning you design your product around price points. Okay, we're not going to go after the cheapy people who want it basically for free, and we're not going to go after luxury people. And products actually can be along the line of cost. So there are financial considerations you could do in terms of performance. That means the features that I have. Or you could do it based on customer characteristics, their demographics, and also their behaviors. And so what you're really doing, though, is first and foremost, think about the value proposition of what you're offering, because that'll help drive you towards what variables you should look at. An example is Toyota. What does Toyota do? They segment their car offerings according to income, meaning when you're starting out and they're going after the new grads, that's why they have the RAV4 and the Corolla. Those tend to be lower priced, so they're trying to draw you in because they want you to buy up the chain. And then as you get older and you're comfortable, you drive the dependable Camry, or maybe you get yourself a minivan because now you have kids. And then there's Lexus, and that's it if you want luxury. And so you could see how Toyota sets up its products. The thing about segmentation is the segment you pick totally determines your entire marketing mix. It's going to set your price. It's going to set what features you want to put in your product. It's going to set how you're going to do distribution. And distribution is how much do I touch the customer. Does it make sense for me to sell in a Walmart? Like, for example, I have a physical product. And Walmart says, we'll take it. And all of a sudden you're all excited. Yay, we're in Walmart. The problem is Walmart takes a pretty hefty cut of the price. There's problem number one. Problem number two is what's going to happen in Walmart. Your product is going to sit on the shelf, and you are now one of 100,000 things in the store. Is Walmart going to go out of the way to promote you? No. And so you have to think twice about these things. And when we get into distribution, we'll talk about these challenges of logistics versus information. And the last part is promotion, and that's how do you want to promote this product? Like for example, I have a luxury product. I have like originally when Tesla came out, the high-end Teslas. Well, do you think they spent a lot of time marketing to college campuses? No, because you don't have any money yet. They'll wait for you when you get out. Um, so it affects that too. So what it comes down to is a segmentation affects everything. And if you remember, good strategies integrate everything together. So all four of those play against each other, but they also align themselves to the segment that you're going after. In terms of variable, how do you segment and what drives it? Essentially, it's a cluster of customers. Um, you look at their values, and again, I'm not going to repeat the values. I've repeated so many times. Uh, and so subsequently, we need to figure out what are the factors or variables that drive the use of this product. And so in terms of variable development, what kinds of variables are they? Techniques for finding them, and user profile. And we'll be discussing that in the next video.